Hello, thanks everyone for joining today's webinar from Real Story Group. This is Scott Dill on the business development team here with RSG, and as you can see, my colleagues Apoorv Durga and Tony Byrne are with me as well as we walk through today's presentation, which will be the future of journey orchestration in an AI world. A very exciting topic for us, and we're happy to share some information that we've come across over the past several months as we've research these marketplaces thoroughly. But as we get started, I do want to mention that we will have time at the end for questions. So if you do have any questions, feedback, or anecdotes you'd like to share, you can enter those into the questions tab and you go to webinar control panel. And also you will be able to get a copy of these slides in a couple of days, and a recording of the presentation will be available for our subscribers. So you can take a look for that in your subscriber library later on this week. So just to get started, I see a number of new names on our list today. It's great to have new folks, as well as some folks that may be familiar with us but could use a refresher on Real Story Group. We're an industry analyst firm. We've been at this for over 23 years now, but we're really different from what you'd call a traditional analyst firm in that we never ever work for the vendors we cover in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so we don't speak at their conferences or write white papers for them, or if they subscribe to our research, we're going to give them any sort of fluffy reviews. Our entire focus is on helping folks like you that are purchasing technology, using technology, to really make the right choice and describe what these vendors do well, but also what they don't do well and where they may fall short for you. And that's really where our name comes from. So we're going to take a pull no punches approach when describing these vendors, and we'll get that started for you today with the heart of today's presentation. So with that, I'll turn things over to Tony and Apoorv. Guys?
Great. Thanks, Scott. Super excited to be here with you. A kind of a long-standing topic around journey orchestration, and of course a newer topic around AI, although I think it's going to be interesting. We may reverse that order a little bit as we go through here. So those of you who follow us know that we cover about 10 different marketplaces. This is a list of all the different vendors that we evaluate, and you can see that they fall into very neatly into this kind of quasi subway or tube map where we show the different vendors and the capabilities that they sell. And of course, we have the city center with a lot of recognizable names, and then also the periphery, which is honestly where a lot of the action is across these different marketplaces. Each colored line on this subway map represents a marketplace, and so we're going to focus a lot on the purple line here, the dark purple line, journey orchestration. But then you'll also see the light green line, AI for marketing. That's also the newest line on this map, and we'll see that those two may not intersect too much, and there's a reason for that. We'll also talk a little bit about the orange line customer data platform. So this is a way of looking at the marketplace. There's another way to look at this, though, from the perspective of your particular stack, and we'll get into that really start kind of kicking us off here in the next minute or two. So always, always, always we start with your MarTech stack. We have some opinions about your MarTech stack and the future of that stack. We have a reference model that nearly all of our subscribers leverage and use along with us to really understand what they're doing today and where they need to be going tomorrow. So first we'll kind of put journey orchestration in the context of MarTech stack trends. Then we'll talk a little bit, not too much history, but a little bit of history about journey orchestration and why kind of the version 1 of journey orchestration honestly turned out to be kind of a disappointment, both from the supplier perspective and the customer perspective. But then look at, okay, well, what does AI and journey orchestration engine technology mean in a kind of a V2 context? And there, the story is still somewhat speculative, but potentially more promising. Okay, so let's get into it. Journey orchestration in your MarTech stack. So let's talk a little bit first about what journey orchestration engines do. I mean, effectively, they take data and events into the platform. That's a really big box, and a lot of things can go wrong there, but nominally, they take data and events in, and then you listen and try to map what's happening. You may apply that against plans and models, then you activate an orchestration, visualize it, and then ideally analyze and optimize it. So this is the a kind of a cycle that typically you would want a journey orchestration engine to follow and pursue and optimize, and then a series of data and events get kicked out to some sort of engagement environment. And what's really interesting about journey orchestration engines is that it was some of the first technology to be truly omni-channel. That was designed really from the beginning to be omni-channel, is particularly the pure play vendors. And so that was somewhat unique, whereas some vendors gave lip service to multi-channel capabilities. Journey orchestration engines, nominally at least, were designed from the ground up to be omni-channel. And so but the reality is that most of us are still, to the extent that we're doing this, we're still focusing a lot on listening and mapping, and a lot of even the journey mapping efforts that we see tend to be more as is than to be, or if it's to be, it's more a series of steps that you might take outside of a particular, it's not from an omni-channel context, but steps that you might do in channel. So there's a lot of immaturity here that we'll talk about in a moment, but nominally this technology is supposed to support at least 6 different use cases. And when we evaluate journey orchestration engine technology, these are the 6 use case categories that we use to try to understand what does this vendor tend to focus on, where they tend not to focus on, which is just as important, and to what degree are they able to execute against this particular scenario. So this is how we evaluate journey orchestration engines, and these are the typical categories that we find you, the customer, thinking about in terms of what are the sorts of capabilities that you're looking to get from this technology. That's just a brief tour of journey orchestration engine technology, but we'll come back to this a little bit later. But first, promise to put this in the context of what we call our MarTech Stack Services Reference Model. So this is a reference model, which means it's a kind of a generic look at what we see as the MarTech stack for the 2020s. This happens to be the business to customer, business really to consumer stack, which is has an analog in a B2B stack that's a little bit different. But both stacks would have these engagement channels at the top, and then interaction delivery environments, and then the first colored row of boxes in the middle are engagement services. That's where many of us have been investing over the last, it's certainly in the 2010s. This is also where we built a lot of silos in the 2010s. So a lot of the 2020s is really around decoupling some services from those silos. And so we call those enterprise foundation services. That's where a lot of the action is right now, particularly in larger enterprises, where we're trying to find silo neutral or channel independent capabilities that can be striped across any of our channels. And so there's a big abstraction effort that's underway here. To the left, we have content and information, omni-channel content services, digital asset management, and so forth. In the center cone here, it's all around customer data. That's where we're seeing a lot of activity in the last several years. And then on the right is decisioning. We know from our own enterprise council that this is the area that we're all probably least mature, is in this right-hand column of decisioning capabilities, including journey orchestration down here. But the point is that this journey orchestration is part of a broader organic trend towards driving more omni-channel capabilities that are decoupled from not just the platforms, but in many cases the vendors that are driving your engagement services. And then the big change that we've made to this reference model in the last couple of years is to add this pink AI layer here, where we have generative AI, insights AI, and decisioning AI. These are fundamentally different types of AI. The same vendor typically isn't good at one versus the other. There's a whole another conversation to be had around that. You can see some publicly recorded webinars on that topic in your webinar library. But in general, this is sort of the model that we pursue. And so then it's interesting to think about, okay, where should journey orchestration capabilities be seated really in this model? And one of the interesting things that we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years is both a dependency and a little bit of competition between customer data platforms, or CDPs, and journey orchestration engines. So we know that customer data platforms, their core purpose is to serve customer data activation, right? To light up all these, to generate and light up these segments and then make them actionable in email, web, e-commerce, all your other channels. Journey orchestration engine nominally is supposed to, at its core, provide journey orchestration capabilities, right? That hence the name. And what's interesting about that is that journey orchestration engine there is a dependency here where journey orchestration engines really require good, clean, unified customer data to do their thing. The dependency is not the other way around. You don't necessarily need to have a journey orchestration strategy to get your customer data house in order. So there is a bit of a dependency, and that's one of the reasons why the journey orchestration landscape has tended to be less mature, because we're still spending a lot of time getting our customer data house in order. But these two also have another interesting interplay in as much as they tend to offer somewhat overlapping services. So for example, some journey orchestration engines would claim to have some customer data segmentation activation capabilities, and many CDPs now offer lightweight journey orchestration. So there's definitely some overlap there between the marketplace. It actually runs deeper than that, because you have CDPs, of course, that can nominally provide other sorts of lower level data services, whether you want them to or not. You have CDPs that claim to also do outbound marketing. And then you have journey orchestration engines that very commonly supply other decisioning services like test and optimize and personalization and so forth. This then gets more interesting because you have CDP vendors that say, well, we can do this too. And then you have journey orchestration engines that say, well, you know, if your data house isn't in order, we can kind of sort of get that data house in order for you. And then of course you have CDP vendors saying we can supply insights via AI to your data. Usually you don't want your CDP vendor to do that, but that's a big selling point right now. Of course, journey orchestration engines say the same. Journey orchestration engine vendors also say they can do decisioning AI, so do some CDP vendors. So from a landscape perspective, this has gotten rather confusing. We can and have had conversations with our subscribers around where do you want to divide the lines here based on what's a priority, what's part of your architecture. But what the larger point that we're making here is that at some level, it doesn't matter where you get your journey orchestration services from. You might get them from a journey orchestration engine. You might get them from your customer data platform. Both models are legit in context. So we'll sometimes speak of journey orchestration, just JO, versus journey orchestration engine, which is a particular way of getting to JO. And this slide just sort of describes that you know, you have kind of typically you have three ways to source journey orchestration services in your stack. One, which gives you the broadest set of capabilities, but probably the most difficult to implement is a dedicated journey orchestration. CDP vendor takes you down that curve. And then there are some other platforms that nominally provide some journey orchestration capabilities, like your ESP or your marketing automation platform. They're likely to be very weak and light capabilities, but they're there and they may already exist. So you have a different set of capabilities in terms of different set of opportunities and challenges with respect to where you're going to get journey orchestration services from your stack. So if we look at journey orchestration technology, there's definitely been kind of a version 1.0, and this really dates to the craze around journey mapping that happened in the mid to late 2000s, where everyone was mapping journeys, and that was really good and important work. And then someone turned around and said, well, how do we take this to-be journey map? And, you know, we paid $200,000 to a consulting firm to generate it. Now, how do we make it happen? You know, where's the control panel in front of us? And so, you know, journey orchestration, initial sort of version 1 journey orchestration engine technologies tried to step into that breach and say, well, we can activate on this to-be journey map for you. And that turned out to be very difficult for a number of different reasons. And the marketplace actually ended up sort of almost falling apart because of the difficulties that customers were experiencing. And the reality is this stuff is hard. This stuff is really hard. And what happened is even the early licensees discovered that they only ended up using a fraction. You know, they imagined themselves like at this nuclear power plant control panel, pushing all the buttons and activating all this great stuff, and customers would go there and this would happen there. And the reality is, it turns out that this was almost as difficult as building a nuclear power plant, and the control panel, you know, was just, it was just sort of an afterthought. You had to deal, if you're going to do journey orchestration across channels, you have to really address some significant enterprise governance and operations issues. First of all, you need to begin by instrumenting some journey listening, and many projects just failed right there because instrumenting listening across multiple channels and bringing that all into a coherent picture, very hard. A lot of disagreements about the breadth of scope. Is this just outbound? Well, then what do we get? But does it also include media inbound? That takes more work. You have to have good, high quality, rationalized customer data. And if that data is not available, it's going to be very difficult to do this. You need to have really strong technical integration chops because your journey orchestration engine has to prompt all these other systems to do things. It very rarely does something itself. It's the control panel that gets other systems to do things. And so that's some thorny integration issues. That then raised, internal skill sets, who's actually experienced in doing this stuff. And then that then led to ongoing program management challenges, particularly around if you're turning all these dials, you kind of need to know what's going on, and you have to remember, why did someone 4 months ago turn dial X down to this and change this rule there? And the sort of human frailty of this really kind of got exposed. And that is one area where I think Apoorv will explain a little bit later, there is some potential for AI to step into the breach. So if we look at this from just looking at, kind of version 1 dedicated journey orchestration engine platforms, a lot of them look like this really nifty kind of control panel here, where we're mapping against a customer lifecycle. Certain things are going to happen here at the banking website, in the app, at the branch, by email. We're going to collaborate on all of it or coordinate all of it. And there were some pros to this approach. It's a comprehensive capability. You could get this with a best of breed system that could tie into all of your other platforms. You can scale it as little or as much as you want. The problems that we ran into and still kind of exist today, honestly, is that the marketplace, the solutions are not very mature, and there were questions of scale and robustness. We talked a lot about the integration with downstream systems. You almost always need a CDP or some sort of customer data set. And then what was really interesting when you watch this was that the managing the decision logic over time gets really arduous. Why did we set this up? Why is this set this way? The rules start getting very complex, and at a certain point it can be difficult, about as, almost as difficult as a nuclear power plant to grasp. And you don't have, PhDs in nuclear science on your staff. And so again, this is an opportunity going forward around AI specifically. So let's take us to this a potential sort of V2 here, and in doing so, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague Apoorv, who's going to step us through some of the promise here. I'll say potential promise because, again, we're the Real Story Group, but to just get you thinking about where some of this may be going. And a lot of this has to do with, really tuning your AI strategy as well. So Apoorv, tell us the latest around what our customers are telling us.
So thank you, Tony. So as Tony mentioned, for years, journey orchestration held the promise, but there were a lot of disappointments, right? We believe that this landscape is shifting now with the advent of what we call accessible AI, right? And this is likely to give a boost to journey orchestration tools. We are calling it the V2 of JO Marketplace, right? So why now? Now, as you might have guessed from an earlier slide, we categorized AI into three types of AIs or 3 domains, right? There's insights AI, there is generative AI, and there is decisioning AI. Now, the success of AI lies in convergence of all these 3 AI domains, right? Now, alone, each of them plays a vital role in understanding and interacting with customers. But when they come together, they become much more powerful than the sum of their parts, enabling a closed loop system that's self-optimizing and all of that. And as we see in the next slide, if we have to close this loop between the 3 AIs, the insights, decisioning, and generative AI, journey orchestration tools or journey orchestration services can play a significant role in that. Imagine this scenario where AI not only predicts a customer behavior with reasonable accuracy, but also decides the best course of action in real time and then generates the content for all those interactions. This can happen by integrating AI and journey orchestration tools in a way that brings best out of both AI and journey orchestration. So journey orchestration then combines the 3 AIs, and in return, AI takes away a lot of work that Joe tools were supposed to or were expected to do. An example of that would be logic and rules within journey orchestration tools, right? as you scale up and you want to target millions of customers with numerous variants of content and huge amount of A/B tests and all of that, it becomes very difficult for journey orchestration tools to maintain and optimize that logic and those rules, etc. But if you hand over some of that and things like testing and optimization, etc., to AI, Joe can be much lighter. It can be lightweight, and you can do a lot more in terms of targeting and creating next best experiences or whatever. Right. So in a way, AI helps Joe tools, and that gives a second chance to Joe tools, and in return, Joe tools help back to tie together all the three different AIs for you to be able to get most benefit out of your AI.
Yeah, so that's a potential win-win here, and just wanted to reiterate on those three boxes of AI, those for many organizations are going to be three different AI vendors, whatever Microsoft or others may tell you. So there is some orchestration that's required to create this flywheel, regardless. So yeah, really good stuff. And so, in terms of the key takeaways, the technology and quite frankly, our ability to leverage it from an ops perspective does still remain a bit immature, but there's some promising here. You are going to need some capabilities to close the loop and create a flywheel among insights, decisioning, and generative AI in whatever order you want to do it. And Journey Orchestrate, there's promise here for Journey Orchestration. In return, closing the AI loop will definitely increase the effectiveness of journey orchestration services. Now, you do need to be somewhat careful about your journey orchestration vendors saying that they have these AI services themselves. On the one hand, it's true that they've probably been doing AI longer than some others. On the other hand, sometimes this is old wine in new bottle, and you need to test out whether the AI capabilities in any MarTech tool are actually better than the AI layer that you may be building at an enterprise layer. So the meta story here is, of course, you definitely want to do your research, and here's where a Real Story Group can help you. There is a very broad AI for marketing technology landscape. There's also a broad journey orchestration engine landscape. You have a variety of tools that are suite dependent and are likely to only work in the context of that suite. You have some other very heavy business process oriented tools in the lower left. You have some that are really more listening and analytics oriented, which has its place. And then there are others that are more full cycle. These used to be independent journey orchestration engine. They've all gotten acquired by customer service and CX oriented vendors, which is interesting, suggests that maybe that use case has been paramount relative to, say, MarTech use cases over the past couple of years. So the marketplace has compressed. The independents have somewhat collapsed. But there's still a variety of capabilities there. And if you're interested in this, this is an area we can definitely help you. We literally wrote the book on selecting marketing technology. And if you have any questions about that, happy to entertain them. But more specifically, there's three ways we can help you. Some enterprises come to us and they're only interested in one line in this subway map, and we can definitely support you there. You can license our research and technology and advisory time. We can help you find the best fit vendor. Some larger enterprises get a full stack subscription where they license all of this research and all the best practices, and we help them optimize their stack as a whole. And then a subset of those join our now 5-year-old MarTech Leadership Council. This is a private, confidential council of MarTech leaders at large enterprises. We meet 3 times a year virtually, twice a year in person, once in North America, once in Europe. Really interesting stuff. And my colleague Scott can tell you more about that. Just wanted to remind you, though, that if you have any questions or comments, things you agree with, things you disagree with, things you wish we covered, feel free to use your questions tab in the GoToWebinar control panel. And while we gather up the questions, Scott can talk to you about next steps.
Great, thanks guys. That was excellent content. And as Tony mentioned, you can take a look at research on journey orchestrations, AI, or any of the other topics that we cover. Just go to realstorygroup.com, sample, and then you can download excerpts from any of those areas. We have a number of webinars that you can take a look at as well on our site. So, for example, Tony mentioned technology selection, and we recently had a webinar about the right way to select MarTech. So if that's something that's of interest to you, you're welcome to take a look at that at our site. And again, if you have questions about joining the Stack Leadership Council, you can just reach out to us at explore@realstorygroup.com, and we'd be happy to set up a call to talk you through the details of what that entails. Tony?
Yeah, so we've got a question here from Salim, who's asking, I have a CDP that we're looking at that claims to do some journey orchestration services. Should I use them, or should I look at one of the vendors on your chart? So Apoorv, what would you say to that?
Well, I would say that both are valid options, right? It totally depends on your use cases. Sometimes for light journey orchestration use cases, a CDP is sufficient. In fact, if you remember that slide which has 3 options, a majority of RSG customers fall in the second category, which is essentially using CDPs for journey orchestration. But having said that, there are some organizations who have much more sophisticated use cases, which are real time in nature and so on. And for those sorts of use cases, a specialized journey orchestration tool might still make sense.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, using your CDP can be a great training wheels, give you that initial journey orchestration palette, some simple rules for people to move from stage to stage. When you start needing more complicated decisioning or next best actions, you might need something more specific. Helly is asking, I didn't see Bloomreach on the CDP map. Where do you see them? So Bloomreach is a kind of a mid-market CDP, tends to be tied in with some of their other capabilities. They're on our radar. We just don't get a lot of demand from them from our customer base. So Thomas is asking, when I look at use cases in ROI business case for CDP, most of the revenue growth ROI comes from use cases that require an activation engine or Joe. Have you seen the same? A CDP itself doesn't really provide much return. What would you say, Apoorv, to that?
Well, so CDPs, there are all kinds of CDPs, right? And we usually differentiate CDPs between in 2 categories, right? There are the data-oriented CDPs or processing-oriented CDPs, and then there are the activation-oriented CDPs. Within activation also, there are some decisioning-oriented CDPs, right? So there are certainly some CDPs who can do activation in a way that is sufficient for you.
Yeah, that's right. But you're correct, Thomas, to the extent that typically a CDP doesn't activate anything. So it requires an engagement environment where the activation happens. It does not require a journey orchestration engine, but it does assume that you have a web content management system, an email marketing platform, a loyalty platform, whatever, where all this data gets activated within. So the CDP itself is really kind of working at that lower level in our stack. James is asking, on the journey orchestration landscape slide, many players have massive price tags, Pega, Oracle, Salesforce. Are there any lower end Joes that would have AI and would suit medium businesses with a smaller budget? James, that's a great question. And my short answer is going to be probably not. It's possible that they exist and we just haven't paid attention to them or seen them, but journey orchestration is a little bit of a luxury capability, I would say right now. You know, true omni-channel journey orchestration is something that typically a larger enterprise is going to have the ability to do. That may change over time, and you may see some more mid-market email platforms and others kind of expanding in this, but it has been a little bit of a luxury buy. Apoorv, without going into great detail because we're close on time, Thomas is asking any opinion on Thunderhead, formerly a partner of Salesforce, now acquired by Medallia.
Yeah, so Thunderhead had a lot of history with Salesforce, right? So it was OEM by Salesforce, and then Salesforce themselves acquired Evergage and started and replaced the Thunderhead OEM with Evergage. Right now, Thunderhead is what we call one of the few specialized journey orchestration platforms. It also claims to have some bit of CDP capabilities, right? But in general, when you use it, you will want to make sure that you have a dedicated CDP and that your customer data house is in order, because it is in itself is a complex platform and it won't be of much use unless you have a CDP in place.
Yeah, back when it was independent, I would say even by journey orchestration standards, it was one of the more complex offerings on the market. And so complexity can be a good or a bad thing. Now that it's acquired by Medallia, it's likely to be more of a antecedent or really an appendage to the other things that Medallia is doing. Unfortunately, that's the case, I think, with a lot of these former independent players, is that they just didn't have enough runway to really get to this version 2 world as independent. So on that note, though, I think there are still a lot of choices in the marketplace. And if you're looking to delve into any of these more deeply, we can certainly help you out there. So with that, wanted to thank you for joining us today, and for my colleagues, Scott and Apoorv. Hope you have a great rest of your week. This is Real Story Group signing out. See you next time. Bye now.